This world of instability, fear, uncertainty that we know of, what will it continue crying over spilled milk, talking about when these conflicts initiated and what needed for a stable future? To really set the ground, ladies and gentlemen, we have someone who's been forward-looking. He takes a reality check of the present to do in one generation, in one lifetime. But some of the reports that have been recently presented and compiled by the World Bank leapfrog within a generation. Is that possible for Pakistan? Is also up for discussion. And I'm sure that, gentlemen, someone who's bringing a lot of focus at Pakistan at 100, a child born today, is going to be 28. And what generation X, Y, Z, whatever you want to call him, what kind of Pakistan, what kind of South Asia, and what kind of a world would be. Gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker to speak about this very important piece. How can we look towards a stable scenario for economic prosperity? Please welcome.
It was meant for reconstruction beyond Europe, beyond the reconstruction of Europe. And we have also been working in the years before in Japan. If I tell you today that the World Bank did finance the bullet train in Japan in the 60s, and people would be surprised. But today we are not anymore in Japan, but again, it tells you how at the end of World War II, European economies, Japan and all the others, including America, all became sort of centers of economic advancement, technology innovation, where high education, research and development further boosted welfare gains for generations. So you fast forward that and look at this part of the world. At the end of the Vietnam War and post its communist era when it embraced market economy, and now you look at Vietnam today, it's a much different country from where it began. But one thing that's common in all these countries that went through these situations of conflict was the strong human capital endowments that were there right through. So at the end of conflict, this asset, this resource, was turned into a net productivity gain for the economies of these countries. And what you see today are these economies that are doing very well, have a very strong human capital base. And this is something that I find in South Asia, where still it remains elusive. And this is why we looked at what Sidra spoke about, Pakistan at 100. This was a project we started 2.5 years ago when Pakistan came out of the last IMF program. And we wanted to see what kind of a country Pakistan would be when it celebrates its first century as a nation. And in doing so, we looked at how other countries have also done similar kind of futuristic vision. And our conclusion is that it's possible for Pakistan in the next 30 years to become an upper middle income country where the per capita incomes could treble for individuals. And the economy as a whole could move from its $350 billion close to $2 trillion. But for that, Pakistan has to do many things. And let me just list a few. First is, as I said at the beginning, human capital gains begin with better education and healthcare facilities. And if you're spending around 3% of your GDP collectively for the two, when peer countries like of similar size to Pakistan are spending double that amount, tells you that there is insufficient resources available to be able to educate and take care of the health of the growing population. Often I have been asked this question, what's the right population size of Pakistan? I don't think there is a right size and a wrong size, but end of the day, it all depends what kind of capacity the country has to be able to carry a large population. In our own projections, if population rates remain as they are at high fertility rates of 3.9 and growth rates of 2.4%, you're likely to double your population in the next 28 years. If you continue doing so, you are not going to get to that optimistic scenario I painted. You're going to be as what you are today. So to us, the number one challenge in this country is how to manage its population in a way that it is sustainable for the country and for its economic growth. Everybody thinks population is only about family planning. I'm glad to see lots of women, young women with us today. If you take some of the economies post-World War, what you saw is there were more women entering the workforce. And that actually helped to do two things. One, it boosted growth. Our analysis of similar situation in Pakistan, if you close the gender gap, you're looking at annual growth rates being boosted by over 30% a year. That is, if you're growing at 6%, you will grow another 2% more on top of it. That's 8%. So that's the more important one. Second is, it also, putting women in workforce means, you start seeing marriages getting delayed, which is also very good. One of the things what we see here is early marriages in South Asia. This is what our analysis shows regionally. And if you are able to contain the population, what you see is you have sufficient resources available then to be able to invest in health and education. If you look at Pakistan's revenue to GDP of around 13%, I'm glad to see my friend and colleague from FPR chairperson here. It's around 13%. And what we know is that for an economy to sustain itself, to meet its day-to-day regular expenditures, whether it's civilian defense, it needs to have a revenue collection of 15%. So I think what the government is doing right now is to focus on trying to see how the tax base can be expanded, how it can be modernized, made more equitable, so that you're going to see revenue collection growing up to 15-18%. That's the goal that's out there. If you're able to get your revenues up, then you're going to have more money to be able to spend on health, education, and other basic services. But having said that, if you look at Pakistan's, what I say, the money available to be able to spend on this historically, when compared with peer countries like Bangladesh or Vietnam, after deducting for debt and defense expenditures, Pakistan has something like 30% available. Compare that with Vietnam has 80% and Bangladesh has 90%. So they have much higher headroom to be able to spend on health and education. And this is why you see the education and health outcomes in those countries absolutely much higher than Pakistan. You don't have global reports coming out saying, gender parity ratio, Pakistan is among one of the worst in the world. So to us, the most important part of looking into Pakistan's future is to sort of ensure that you have a prosperous nation is focus a lot on investing in human capital, human development, women's economic empowerment, and this is actually going to help you transform this economy in less than, just in around a generation or so. If you don't do it, this generation of young people, just think about sort of a young girl today who is 10, she'll be 38, what kind of economic opportunities are going to be out there? So whether you have war, conflict or not, this is something critical that Pakistan needs to continue to focus. Let me go and talk about the other area where it is often cited as challenging is the water scarcity that is right now before Pakistan. And many times everybody talks about future wars are going to be around water sharing and access to water. So what's the situation in Pakistan? Often the rhetoric is climate change is causing a lot of water scarcity. I don't deny that. But at the same time, if you look at the water use pattern in this country, there's a lot of water abuse happening. Take the case of agriculture sector. 4 of
The voice of reason and optimism, but I like that there's always an if. Yes, the potential is great, you can have a great golden future, provided you're going to keep it very, very current, and we're going to draw upon every drawing room, every luncheon that I go to, every high tea that I'm invited to, whether it's assembly. The very organization which was set with the intention of keeping the world away from a ravaging next global war. While it has been very, very successful in preventing World War III, I particularly like this one sentence where it says, either it's the UN or is it the Cold War that kept the world preoccupied from 1945 to 1990. Indirectly, it seemed that their objective was developing a balance of terror in preventing a war in the international arena. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd make that there's no violence. For that, the premise would have to be that you speak your language, maybe beginning with Fahd would be, do you think Pakistan is speaking the world's language and empathize with us?
Thank you, Sidra. We have many weaknesses, and we all know that. And some of the weaknesses have been pointed out by head of the World Bank in a very, very impactful speech. And it's a very difficult discussion that we have. But one fundamental weakness I believe that we have is that Pakistan does not have a story. So if you were to ask anybody, there's a time of global connectivity and global narratives and battle of ideas. And in that sense, Pakistan, not only does Pakistan not have a story to tell, in fact, we are allowing other people to craft our story for us in negative terms. Why do we not have a story to tell? I believe there are a number of issues, primarily because the state of Pakistan has failed to appreciate the impact that a global story can have right now. So now the first failure is that we have not appreciated the fact that we need to have a story to tell. And if somebody says we can't have a story, I would have to humbly disagree. We have a story to tell. Because we have not recognized the importance of telling a story, we have not built an infrastructure through which we can actually tell that story. And what is that is known as a strategic communication, impactful in the way that we would speak to the world today. I believe it is still not too late, but
that and pass the same question on to Dr. Ghous. Dr. Ghous, is it also important to understand who are we speaking?
I answer your latter part or the addition which you have done to your earlier question. I think it is very important for us like to see and understand what peace is and how peace is. India and Pakistan, probably peace would, if there is no war and because there was no tensions which were escalated. So it's how one would like to look at peace. Is it the absence of the war? Is it the de-escalation of the tensions? Is it the harmony or the peace or the getting along of the leadership between the two countries? Or is it the sort of getting along well between the people and the societies of the two countries? So I think it's very important to actually be understanding that what are the leaderships of the two countries actually looking at and targeting at. If they are inciting violence at the societal level, at the level of the people, and they are sort of inculcating hatred, because that is exactly what they are doing at this particular point of history. They are somehow embedding hatred at the people's level. So what they would be able to do is, then it would be very, very difficult for them to actually later on think of consolidating the peace constituency. So I think it's very important when we are talking about, and it varies from case to case, when we would be looking and trying to understand probably peace in some other case where the conflict exists, because there would be certain other considerations or the attributes that we would be trying to understand. But in our case, it is something very different. We are looking probably what the Prime Minister was doing is that he was trying to explain to the world that India and the Indian society is in the process of indoctrination as it has happened at some point in our case. I'm sorry if I'm going beyond, exceeding what I should be doing. Because when you're talking about racism, you're talking about radicalization, then it leads to a next sort of level. It takes you to a next level. Right. So I think it's very important for us what is the vocabulary, the language. Even if you are talking about an issue which is in the making, it is the language which makes it either an issue which is of a concern to the global community and to the society, or it politicizes it.
Right. So, I mean, the
So I
right
think
choice
it's
of
very
words
important.
is going to be important here.
Yes.
Building on this.
I think when we talk about the heading of this the forum, I think for me, we are talking about a peace, about the regional peace, but my fundamental question and related to money laundering also, whether as a society in Pakistan, we are at peace among ourselves, mentally, financially, psychologically, because I feel when I deal with the people that there is a lot of non-stability in the mindset of the people about the future of the economic situation in the country in the past. And our discourse was slightly away from the real issues of the country which we have faced, because of which we are facing the economic problems of the country. So as Sidra said about this money laundering and the things which we have never discussed in Pakistan, the way the money has, I'm not talking about anything about the corruption issue. I am talking about the way the money has actually moved out of Pakistan, and people have created safe havens, rightly so, because there was no, I will not say peace in the sense of war. There was not, they felt somehow insecure in Pakistan, so they had the richer class had a mindset of having a second home somewhere. So when there is an instability, they can settle up there. So being and this is what I've been.
Shabbar Zaidi, what was the reaction you received? I mean, the Prime Minister spoke of the catch, and these are the same countries telling us to take care of our health care, our education, look after our people. So what was the reaction you got from the world?
This is exactly what I told the Prime Minister, and I think he just touched upon it in the speech, that in the last 20 years, we have transferred $6 billion a year, $6 billion a year outside Pakistan. A year. And this is not my figure, this is a figure reported in the Supreme Court judgment, in everybody knows about it. And we are begging or borrowing for $7.2 billion. So what is the reason for that thing? And the way the world has been created, the economic world has been generated, that there are very safe havens created under the national system, where, as the Prime Minister said, that there are systems in the world where you can legally park. I've used the laundered money, but I'm saying money which you consider unsafe in your country. So this has been, if you look at the biggest problem of Pakistan is that I take it in this manner, that there was no mental peace, I would say, in the mind of the well-to-do Pakistanis. Why it is so? As Mr. Illango has said about the investment percentage in Pakistan is one of the lowest in the region. Why? Is it the opportunity, or is it the the question of economic stability. But just to give a positive sign of it, I say the discourse of the Pakistan in the last 7-8 months have totally changed. This is my personal view. Now the people are talking about money laundering, people are talking about hawala, people are talking about the hundi, the transfer of money, the under-invoicing, the smuggling, the issues which were not being discussed at large.
But Shabbar Sahib, you've really hit the nail when you say that the hundis, the hawala.
Interaction. I was there when we first started it, and I greatly appreciate this initiative. And I thank you, Sidra, for
Always a
getting
pleasure,
in touch
sir.
with me. And this is a very worthwhile forum and a very worthwhile exercise that we undertake. Now, very briefly, I'll say a couple of things first before I talk about external peace and internal peace, which you raised. Enterprising peace struck me as a very interesting formulation because I've heard of all kinds of other adjectives for peace, like striking peace or breaking peace or forming peace, but this is marrying enterprise, which is a business concept, with peace, which is a geopolitical concept. Now, I bring the foreign policy or a international relations perspective. So I'll just make 2 or 3 quick points about global politics. Global politics in the 21st century is undergoing a remarkable, very, very striking transformation.
Mm-hmm.
There are, first, the zero-sum games don't apply anymore. There used to be blocs and alliances. Now, I'll give you an example from our own region. Pakistan has always been traditionally a friend with the US. Now, the US has a big partnership with India, but US wants to remain engaged with Pakistan. Russia has been a very old friend of India, has had treaties of friendship with them over many decades, but Russia is reaching out to Pakistan now. I have myself been invited twice to Russia in the last 2 years. And third, China is a very good, steadfast friend of Pakistan, but China has a thriving trade relationship with India. So all the old alliances, links, patterns of global politics have been blurred, are changing. The other thing that's happening is that there are new developments. There is populism from Trump to Philippines, from the US to Philippines, from Trump to Duterte, to Spain, to Austria. There are all these populists who are coming to power, and next door is Modi, the Indian Prime Minister.
And unfortunately, they are mongering hate.
Climate change, these are going to hit the entire globe, humanity as a whole. So, in that context, external peace is very important. And unfortunately, we, as somebody just remarked earlier on, that there is no connectivity in this region. I mean, my roaming phone works in the US and Canada, but it doesn't work in Delhi. And I can't reach my home in Islamabad from India because there is no connectivity. Similarly, we can't do it in Kabul.
I have a slightly dated data to add over here. It was 10 years ago when they did a survey and they found out that the entirety of the global...
No credibility for a whole set of reasons, which I don't want to go into, but everybody knows. We have had, military governments, we have had a change of policies, we haven't had any consistency in what we say or do.
But the US deal is happening at a time when we have the third tenure of a democratic government.
Right, exactly. But the credibility, once it's gone, Sidra, it takes a very long time to come back. The Kashmir issue, for example, it has been not just a question of projecting it properly, it's been a victim of Cold War rivalry. Because the Soviet Union at that time used to veto resolutions on Kashmir throughout the 50s and the 60s. Kashmir has gone through many phases and many turmoil, changes, and therefore, at this juncture, we have a case of showing massive human rights violations in Kashmir. And we have talked about it, the Prime Minister has done a remarkable job in doing it, but the problem is much deeper. And then there is global politics. You see, all countries, why does Saudi Arabia and the UAE, why do they give awards to Modi? That's global politics.
And the global politics has sort of, has fallen in love with these two words. Dr. Ghous, if I may bring this to you. We hear a lot about radical Islam. We hear a lot about...
Now, you have come up with a question which actually requires a very detailed deliberation, but I would try to. I think this will again take us into so many other issues. When you look into the Europe, one would actually be talking about the patterns of the migrations which has taken place, because there are other interconnected issues which actually creates the type of the rivalries and the whole issues of identities and so on and so forth. So much has come out of Europe, the entire 90s and so on and so forth, which created this entire issue. We look at Islamophobia and the type of the literature which has come out of from Europe through the lens of religion alone. But the type of the issues which actually generated in Europe and some of the European countries are because of so many other issues which came over there, and the rift which created in those actually the issues. The whole issues of integration, the assimilation, and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't actually be going in there.
But if I may probe you, I remember you coming on my show, and once we were talking about all these interventions that we try to do to integrate and assimilate these various segments of society together. For example, in Pakistan,
not able to actually get themselves, even despite the fact that they have been living in those societies for decades altogether. So I think it's an altogether different debate. I wouldn't like to enter into that because it has caused serious issues. But coming down to this whole issue of the radicalization, radicalization again is multifaceted. It has come in front of us in different forms. It is even there in a very secular, largest democracy. I don't want to sound like a typical Pakistani, but it is there in the making in Indian society also, the largest democracy. So I think we are seeing it in different forms. It is there in American society also, where you feel superior to the other races.
But what do they have different then? I mean, just my last probe into this, just like you said, that there are so many people who've made that migration.
My understanding, post 9/11 and thereafter the way that the development took place, I think it was also thereafter with all the type of the legislations, with the marginalizations of the Muslim minority communities living over there, they were unable to get themselves integrated over there, and the type of the legislations, the headscarf, so on, and the whole issues of the identities coming over there. I mean, it is so complex. The issues of identities in itself is so very complex. These are, and they're all interrelated in one way or another.
I want to add.
At one point, I'll say one last thing.
Sure.
I was actually contacted by the Norwegian embassy to actually, they wanted to take me over there because there's a huge Punjabi population over there, and unable to get themselves assimilated over there. To talk to them and see to it why they are unable to get themselves integrated and assimilated in those societies.
But these realities, the money havens you spoke about, people suddenly felt it so unsafe to keep them in Europe. Pakistan saw a...
I personally, as an accountant and dealing in the foreign exchange, I don't think that people have brought the money back after 9/11. So this doesn't tie up with the books. Actually, it has gone out.
It has gone out.
It has gone out.
So is war good for politics?
No, so what I'm saying that the war, all the wars, in my personal view, has been because of the economic reasons, and But what I see in Pakistan, again I'm saying in Pakistan, that since at least 1990s, there has been a very serious outflow of the real investment from Pakistan. And I can tell you, and I can give you that, you see that Bangladesh has increased its exports many times in the last 4 or 5 years. But we know how many Pakistani investors via Dubai are working in Bangladesh. So, as I said in the first discourse, that the first thing we have to establish in Pakistan is consistency and stability in our own, as Fahd said, in our story and in our own background and our system, because we have been changing our positions too frequently. True. And when you change because from the economic point of view, a good economist will not invest unless he thinks 50 years ahead. And in Pakistan, our timing is a 2 year, not more than 2 years.
True.
So when you think only for 2 years or 1 year, then the real investor will not be. We were talking day before yesterday. We were talking to all the major business houses of Pakistan, all, and I could see in their mind. They were not asking it, but I could see from their implied perception and implied question that what they were asking is stability.
So, Shabbar Sahab, I have a question then. When we hear the Prime Minister
saying the Indian threat is a strength for Pakistan, but the disparity and the instability in Pakistan is a bigger threat for investment. India, we have a relationship with India, good, bad, whatever it is.
Perhaps Shabbar Sahab could answer this in the context of this very interesting meeting he had yesterday.
And
in
today.
Rawalpindi. Perhaps in that context he could answer this.
No, what I'm saying, that India, if there is any relationship with India, that is a stability for Pakistan, I would say. Because Pakistan gets united. Pakistan gets one voice.
No, but I want to know
but
what
I'm
does a
saying,
businessman
within
think?
Pakistan,
Yes.
we have to have one consistent, stabilized, pro-economics, pro-people discourse. We lacked.
Shabbar
If you
Sahab,
look
how are we,
I-
sorry, if I may just interject and ask you one little question. And this is very timely. Suddenly we see all the other things crop up in our discourse. So has the issue of Karachi. That being the economic nerve, how vulnerable are we in terms of the economics, in terms of an economic war?
That's exactly what I'm saying, that we are saying that the fight with India, the destabilization with India or something like India will have effect. But I think which we are ignoring and we are not putting right perspective is the condition and the situation and the kind of governance we have in the financial capital of the country, which is Karachi. So this is what I was saying in the first part of it. Let us concentrate on our internal, I will not use the word peace, our internal stabilization or internal stability or internal consistency of the policies or internal system. I was just discussing today with a very senior government official that in Tehran, the 90% of the expenditure of Tehran's development is done by the municipal taxes which are collected from Tehran housing. And in Lahore and Karachi and Islamabad, the expenditure of the city expenditure is not gone even to the extent of 5% from the taxes, the property taxes we collect in Lahore, Karachi and Islamabad. So you cannot run a country like this. Any good city in the country, in the world runs the roads, the sewerages, the lights, the police, the security on the property taxes from that city. In Pakistan, not even 5% of the expenditure is borne by that city. And the person was giving the example of Tehran. Tehran is doing very well in spite of sanction because the property taxes collection in Tehran is extraordinarily good. Same is the case in London. True. Same is the case in New York. But we expect that we will not pay property taxes, and somebody will come and do our sewage, and somebody else will do our roads, and somebody else will do. So these what I am saying, these contradictions.
Yes.
These are the mental contradictions.
And just like you would say that Karachi is mini Pakistan, you've seen it mired in ethnic conflict and violence for many decades, and even with, just like Sarwar Sahab was pointing out, with.
No, I will just give you an example.
Yes.
I was talking today with as a chairman, I was talking to the motorcycle industry people in Pakistan, and they say that the percentage of motorcycle increase in Pakistan is more than anywhere else in the world. And the reason is that in Karachi and almost all the big cities, we don't have any public transport system.
True, very true.
And that is not a development. It is, I would say, it is anti-development, because the motorcycle is a risky and expensive and pollution creation.
And not sustainable. Absolutely, Shabbar Sahab. Point well taken. Fahd, you wanted to respond?
If I could just pick up from where Shabbar Zaidi Sahab is saying, I think, and I'll connect it to your original question. When we were talking about the Pakistan story, we can even bring the same concept down to the issues that we are talking about today, in particular what Shabbar Zaidi Sahab is saying. So, for example, you know, I think the difference between perception and reality is rather stark, but actually not. So, for example, you know, we're about 150 people in this room. But if you were to completely switch off all the lights right now, and one person walked in and there was just one torch shining on one person, for that person, the reality would be, the perception would be that there is one person in this room. But for him, the reality would also be that one person, because the reality is defined by what that person is seeing through his or her eyes.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to take that logic to the government's economic performance, see, wherever you go, the perception is, mar gaye, tabah ho gaye. There is a perception. I'm not arguing what the reality. The perception is कि बड़ा बुरा हाल है, business collapse कर रहे हैं, नौकरियां खत्म हो रही हैं, growth rate is tanking, and generally we are in a huge mess. That's the perception. Now, when Shabbar Zaidi Sahab and all the other economic, the members of the economic team of the Prime Minister,
हमारे पास कोई 5-year, 20-year economic plan नहीं. आप हर बंदे के साथ, हर बंदा आपको economic vision दे देगा, उसको plan नहीं देगा. You can have a vision
statement, but no roadmap.
So there can never be stability. If government's particular person is irrelevant. In the economic field, a particular person is irrelevant. The person relevant is the economic plan, not the vision. And the vision has to be converted into a plan. And for the last 35 to 40 years, irrespective of the other things, we never had any economic plan. And I totally agree with Fahd that whatever we are, the Kadvi Goli we are having, uska effect, translation jo hogi, uske baare mein perception totally zero.
So to quote from Alice in the Wonderland, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Sarwar Sahab, your take.
In this way of listing all the problems, I always want to make a point that diplomacy is what diplomats do, but what we lack is public diplomacy. And what I mean by that is that we have, when we talked about connectivity, you see, we don't have interaction with the people in that country. Like in Afghanistan, we have no news bureau from Pakistan, no university exchanges, no think tanks exchanges. With Iran, we don't have any bureau in Iran. We don't reach out to the people. You just expect the embassies to be doing this. That's not enough. There has to be people-to-people interaction in this region with our neighbors. India is a special problem because we don't have good relations with them, but we can do it with Afghanistan and Iran, and that is something that would really generate goodwill in those countries, which doesn't exist at this time.
Absolutely. So you capitalize on the people-to-people corridor. Thank you so much. And my entire panel has been exceptional with their insights and what they shared over here. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd now like to open the floor for questions. We'll have about 20 minutes for it. I see a
let me tell it very candidly. And I said it as an amicus curiae in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, that all this money has gone out of Pakistan legally. Legally. $6 billion of Pakistan have been repatriated out of Pakistan through foreign currency account and hawala legally, not illegally. The corruption is, leave aside the corruption. But I say the corruption money will maybe 20% or 15%, but 85% have gone out legally, and there is no way of bringing it back. Let's be very clear on this. Let's be very clear on this.
Thank you for that clarity,
So
Shabbar.
this perception that there is $100 billion of Pakistanis lying outside Pakistan, and we will bring some draconian law or something, some international treaty, and the money will be coming back. This is a total wrong perception. The money and the foreign exchange for a private currency, foreign currency account Act 1992, which was promulgated in 1992, allowed Pakistanis to transfer untaxed money in Pakistan, outside Pakistan, without any restriction. And the money has gone legally. This is my statement to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and Supreme Court has accepted it in this order. So this repatriation, yes, repatriation can be done when we prove that the money acquired was through unlawful means in Pakistan, which will be a very small sum out of the total money.
So the movement of money that has happened is legal, and I think we need to correct these perceptions.
And this is our perception. This is a wrong perception. If your remittances are $20 billion, then they should have been 25, and 5 are, which should have come to Pakistan, they are going out to Pakistan because of, again I am saying, you have to stabilize your own economy first.
True.
You have to create confidence in the country first. Then, firstly, your investor will invest, then the foreigner will come in.
Thank you, Shabbar sir, for that clarity. We'll take another question. Yes, sir?
Yes, my name is that money at 3%, and if that money has gone out legally, why is it that the custom says there are no repatriation of money, very small repatriation of money on exports? Is it true? I am saying export is being used for money laundering.
Let me explain to you. Export, under advising of the export or advising of import are the trade systems. But what I am saying, if you go around defense in Lahore or defense in Karachi and tell me one well-to-do family who does not have a house in Dubai or London, then you will know all the money is gone. And whose money is this? Simple as that. This is not a rocket science. Tell me one well-to-do Pakistani who does not have created another abode outside Pakistan for future. And tell me one of the rich Pakistanis whose children are not being educated outside Pakistan out of the money which are sometimes taxed, sometimes untaxed. So these are the realities of the country, and these realities of countries are not publicly discussed.
Yes.
These are not publicly discussed. The question I am asking again, reiterating, tell me one well-to-do Pakistani who does not have a house in London, Dubai, Singapore or New York.
On a lighter note, we're all suddenly feeling very poor, Shabbar Saab. Thank you for that.
Two names, in my diplomatic experience, know that. There are two names that are recognized the world over from Pakistan. One was Benazir Bhutto, and the other now is Imran Khan. And I have seen this in the highest levels of high society in Europe, in America, where people about Pakistan, you say that you are from Pakistan, and they'll say, I know that your leader is a man called Imran Khan. Trump is happy to meet him. He is not that happy with Modi. Melania comes out of her private quarters to come and get photographed with Imran. So, you know, we have to capitalize on this. We should cash it. And then we have so many other things that we should be doing to build up our credibility.
If you remove all the laws about the money laundering, do you believe that the money will come back?
Yes.
No, why? Why it will come back?
She says yes.
Why?
Sir, because no one has to.
No, that's the question is, I would say it will not come back, it will go out. You know, the investment is...
If you
is
open
not,
the floodgates,
let
more
us
will
be
go
very
out.
clear on one thing. There is no patriotism in capitalism.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. Well said.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. We have another. Can we please
The patriotism is, the capitalism is where the return is, where the safety is, where the trust is, the money will go there.
Shabbar Sahib, is that very frustrating, knowing that and sitting in the position?
No, I am not here to create patriotism. I am here to collect taxes. That's all. There's nothing to the collecting of taxes. Nothing to do with the
But
patriotism.
isn't that the oldest argument, that if you are patriotic,
That's what I'm saying. This argument that if you are patriot, you should pay taxes. That argument is just is a slogan. But I'm saying tax. And let me say one very basic thing. We have to understand that tax is a social, and in my view, even it's a religious obligation. It's a contract with the state. And when you have agreed to live in that state, you have to comply with that contract.
True.
And anyone who does not comply with the contract is actually not fulfilling the religious and the social requirement. Unfortunately, people in our preachers, they don't take it like this. The tax is a social contract, and our book, our holy book, says that you have to comply with your contracts. And tax is a social contract with the government of Pakistan. The money will not come back, money will go out. But the money will come back. Yes, the money will come back when you create environment. Pakistan is a lovable country, but we should make it livable.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much for that. Yes, ma'am.
The past governments, we have made the government smaller in the field where it should be larger, and we have made the government bigger where it should be small. For example, we have PIA, we have railways, we have got steel mill, we have got everything. This is not the government job. And we have privatized education, we have privatized health, we have privatized the thing. So there has been a fundamental error in the manner of governance of Pakistan, that the government became a businessman. The government is not a businessman. The government cannot do businesses, and that policy has to be the privatization. If you look at the privatization has not been done for actual real privatization has not been done for last 20 years.
True.
The last privatization was something like PTCL. At that time, the call used to be 120 rupees. Now the call is 20 paisas, even less than that. So the question is that as a policy in the developing country, the government cannot be smaller in education, it cannot be smaller in health, and it cannot be smaller in public transport. Unfortunately, these three basic facilities, and fourth, security. In these four basic prerequisites for a common man, we have made the government smaller, and we have made the government bigger. The third, and the peripheral to this is, the government has to create environment for investment, not making investment itself. So we actually entered into making investment rather than creating environments. We made a place called Site in Karachi in 1960. In 60 we made a place called Site, and that was at that time one of the best industrial estate in the world. And we have not made any similar thing for the last 70 years. So the question is, our priorities have to be realigned. And I can feel it that I'm not saying that a particular government, but at least society at large is now realizing the real role of the government should have been, and I think that we are going, in my personal view, we are going in the right direction.
And you need to be an enabler. The fact that you...
Sector. So we have never really established that kind of an equilibrium. And we have never really focused on the human security issues, human development, human capital. And second is that that kind of a focus of the divide and the disparity has never been there. So I think that kind of focus is but very essential to be there. We missed on all the MDGs. Our focus, it just surprises you many a times when you look at the prioritization of the SDGs, the way that it has been done. I'm sorry, the head of the UNDP is sitting over here. When you look at the provincial prioritization of some of the SDGs, because your question was on the inclusive and the inclusivity of all that. Because when you're talking about that, you have to look on some of the areas which are there. So it just tells you so much about the importance or focus of the provincial governments also. So I think it is still yet not there. I say that because even today, this is 2019. I'll give you a small example. What is the female labor force in Pakistan? Shabbos.
Yeah.
One thing, as rightly said by Fahd, that people don't pay taxes because they don't get anything. Pakistan, we have a very strange system, and that is the result of the 18th Amendment and NFC award. The federal government gives 60% of the money to the provinces. Almost 60%, 57.5%.
Which award?
Huh?
The previous award?
Huh?
The current? Which award?
So all the and the provincial governments are not tuned to earn any money and to care about the money which they have not earned, because we earn and give it to them. So this is a very unfortunate part, is that it is not restricted to Sindh and Punjab, or all the provincial governments, they receive so much cash and without any effort that they are not tuned to realize the usefulness of the money, and same is the case of local governments. So local governments and the provincial governments have got no role in the collection of taxes. And if you look at any of the place in the world, including India, the contribution of the local government and the provincial government is at least 7 to 8% in GDP. In our case, it is less than 1%. So that is one of the biggest tragedy of Pakistan is, as far as the federal government is concerned, where I am looking at it, we start with a negative balance sheet. If we collect deduct the money we pay to the provincial governments and the defense expenditure which will be, so we start with negative. So this is another very important part of it, that in Pakistan there is a total disconnect between the people who provide services and people who actually collect revenues. So that this disconnection has to be reconnected, and the public discourse is not on that subject. We consider the 18th Amendment and the NFC award as a question of political autonomy. Yes, it's a question of political autonomy, but political autonomy is directly related to the money you actually earn and you spend. So that's a very important question. You that it's a chicken and egg position. Firstly, you will generate revenue and you create employment, or you create employment and generate revenue. But what our targets is, you are right in one perspective, that there are many utilities which are used by the common man, and I think the people who are on the
Exactly,
on a lower
necessity
side
goods.
of the spectrum, who have to bear this, like petrol, utilities, and we have a problem on this, and I can assure you that if we will be considering to review that. But if you look at the trend which we have set down in this budget, is that we have not we had given a very big target by the IMF. We could have easily done by increasing the sales tax rate from 17 to 18 to 19. We have not done it. And it is a clear policy of the Prime Minister that we should not increase any tax on any item which is prone for food item or relating to consumption of atta, chini, dal, and things like that. But your observation is correct. Let me, another thing, tell you another very important thing. To create employment, in my personal view, is not the job of the government.
But it's the job of the businesses. So we are not.
It is a job of the government to create environment that the businesses prosper, and the business prosper, and they reinvest and they come in. As I have said to you earlier, we have created an environment. We had created, and I don't want to commit whether we have closed it or not. We had created an employment where the real capital of Pakistan was going out of Pakistan. I'm not committing whether it is that leakage has stopped, but we have created an environment, and I reiterate that our foreign debt is $76 billion, and I can guarantee you Pakistanis had $120 billion outside Pakistan, as I said, legally. So we had not created, since 1970, we have not created real employment in Pakistan. And I can give you a study, this subject is not the economic subject. I can show you a study that Pakistan after 1970 has been prematurely deindustrialized. Has been prematurely deindustrialized, and that is creating a job issue for us, as you are rightly saying. And if you look at the policies of the government, and one of the objectives of the government is to spend time and money for the industrialization of the country, and that is one of the. And I give you one example.
Shabbar Sahab, again on your statement, if I may.